Okay, hi guys. Today we will have a special discussion with Dr. Rose Tapsell. He is a senior lecturer and researcher at the Australian National University College of Asia and the Pacific, specializing in Southeast Asian media, the book author as well, and has written for New York Times, Vice, a lot of commentary on Indonesian newspaper as well. Thank you for coming, Dr. Rose, on my YouTube channel. And how are you there on COVID in Canberra?
Yeah, thanks, Faldo. Thanks for having me. Honored to be considered, part of the youth on the YouTube channel that you're running. Yeah, Canberra is COVID free. We haven't had a case in Canberra for a number of months, so we're very lucky. Australia has taken a very hard and strict approach to COVID. Obviously, being an island, it's made sure that anybody coming in has had to quarantine for 2 weeks in a hotel. And then they've suppressed the virus in the community. So you probably, if you know about the Australian Open tennis going on at the moment, they've had a small outbreak, and they've now locked down the whole of Melbourne, and they've said no more crowds at the tennis. So it's quite a strict approach, but it's ultimately a safe one. So most of us, particularly in Canberra, we can live normal lives. Don't have to wear a mask. You can go and meet friends and go to houses and that kind of thing. But in order to do that, every time there's an outbreak, you need to have a strict lockdown. So yeah, that's just, of course, Australia's smaller population. Indonesia has it a lot harder, but obviously the good news is that we're living quite normally.
Okay, so can I visit Australia if I'm coming from Indonesia? Still, it's so difficult, right?
No, and that's the big concern. How long can we do this? So even Australians who are trying to get home from overseas are finding it difficult to get a flight, or they can't afford the expensive cost of a flight, and so they're stuck overseas. And this is a problem for the Australian economy. We want, foreigners coming in for tourism, for international students. And so, yes, we're safe, and we understand the rules, but unfortunately, it means no one can come in unless you have Australian residency. So that's very disruptive for many Indonesian students who were hoping to come to universities like mine this semester to start S3, S2, or S1, and we'll just have to either try to teach them online, or they'll wait one more year.
Okay, so the same like Indonesia, we still do online as well. And I actually graduated from my second master on political science and University of Indonesia, and do the thesis online, do the
Wow.
final test online. And
Congratulations.
yeah, being a politician in Indonesia, you have to fulfill a lot of title, I think. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, Dr. Rose, I'm interested on your last comment, the buzzer and media. This is the main topic that we want to discuss today. But before we start to explore about the main topic, explain and share to everyone, especially for my subscriber, why you're interested on Indonesia or doing research of Southeast Asia, probably.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything, there's no easy answer. Like Indonesian term might be like it's nasib, there's no real like reason. I didn't plan it. I certainly, when I was in first year university S1, I certainly didn't think I would end up being an expert on Southeast Asian media. But yeah, I just traveled to Indonesia and made lots of friends, and loved living there and working there for a short time, and just enjoying going to Indonesia regularly. And then I did, S3, a PhD in Australia Indonesia relations, and yeah, it's just been just one thing led to another, and here we are. So yeah, there was no life strategy, no life plan. I just followed what I like doing, and often that involved Indonesia, and yeah, here we are.
Do you
Nasib,
think
Valdo.
do you think it's related because we are too close? I mean, like a lot of good Indonesian is from Australia. I mean, like we heard a lot of NU has the best, I think, one of the research center about Indonesia, right? We have some interests.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, there's so many Australians going to Bali,
Huh.
and Australia-Indonesia relations is a very important topic here for discussion. And yes, I'm very lucky that I got to the ANU, where there's just a great history of Indonesia specialists, Australians and Indonesians, working at the ANU. So yeah, it's a wonderful place, and some of the great, you know, books on Indonesia have been written by scholars at
Mm.
ANU. So yeah, I think you're right. That's a big factor. You know, initially I was actually interested in Cambodia, but
Mm.
the supervisor, my honors, my scriptsy supervisor was Edward Aspinall,
Oh,
and
very
you know,
sweet.
he convinced me that Indonesia would be a great topic. So yeah, having that scholarship ahead of me certainly helps. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Dr. Ross. Maybe we can start about the buzzer and disinformation. I saw your last report published by NATO Strategic Communications. You say that in historical context in Indonesia after election, especially in 2019, there's a deepening the divides and creating violent new fractures. Do you think that situation is still happening until today in Indonesia, or we are doing better? Or even
Well, I
worse.
think it's happening globally. The studies on polarization in Indonesia are really interesting. Some other political scientists, colleagues of mine, friends of mine, are working on that, looking
Mm,
at the polarization around the role of Islam that it plays
mm,
in the state. You know, that doesn't mean that
okay.
Indonesians want an Islamic state necessarily. It means that some people want more Islam to be more central, and some people want Islam to be less central. And so that polarization is one clear factor in Indonesian politics.
Mm,
With regard to the strategic comms report that you're talking about there, I'm mainly talking about the way in which digital campaigners try to use certain narratives to create agendas which make people angry or make people divided. Because for a political campaign and for something to go viral on SOSMED, you really need it to be related to, say, identity politics, or related to attacking a candidate through a black campaign. And that can really lead to a more divisive election online.
and because I think when you use the taste of angry polarization in Indonesia, we call it you can get viral gitu. Because there's the polarization in political landscape in Indonesia uh, getting sharper after the election in 2019. Maybe started from the DKI probably in 2017, I think.
Understand, yeah. And it's very interesting to think of these youth parties as the way forward. As you probably know, Malaysia has created the Muda
Oh
Youth
yeah,
Party.
yeah.
You know, and so I guess the challenge for people like yourselves and Samara and Muda in Malaysia is, you know, how do you appeal to youth outside of the capital city and outside of urban areas where SOSMED is
Mm,
high?
mm,
And that's a really interesting topic to think about when we think about digital media campaigning,
yeah.
and to try and reach citizens outside. And you know, a lot of the younger people like yourselves sort of grew up in you know, liberal circles of the capital. And just so many people never heard of PSI in the last election,
No,
right? They didn't even
no,
recognize that it was a party.
no.
So getting that awareness out through social media, but also to areas that have lower social media
Yes.
access, or very small access, is going to be really important for youth parties.
Yeah, it's true because we still have time, at least 4 years, maybe 3 years before 2024. Hopefully, we can fulfill. Okay, Dr. Rose. When you say that buzzer always do this information, you claim it the many times, and you say that give a bad political discourse, and moreover the polarization. Can you explain more about that again? And maybe you can share about the difference in some other countries in Southeast Asia as you report.
Yeah. Yes. So buzzers is one form of digital campaigning that we've seen in other countries as well. So Malaysia has had cyber troopers for quite some time. The Philippines, they're generally known as trolls, and more recently known as Duterte's troll army. And what you mean by that is like people are paid money to campaign for a certain candidate on social media or push a certain agenda. Usually it's around election time, but it can also be non-election times where these new form of digital labor, which is obviously very effective in Southeast Asia because a lot of people are on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and so on. And also there's the labor market. There's a lot of young people who are happy to be employed either casually or part-time in this space. And they're very good at it. Let's face it, Indonesians, Southeast Asians are fantastic at using social media. Yeah. So it's no surprise that Southeast Asia has been really central to this new form of digital media practice. Okay. And of course, as more and more people go online, it means that candidates feel like they have to hire teams in order to get their messages out. But more importantly, they feel like they've got to hire buzzers or a campaign digital team because they're worried about a black campaign against them online. Okay. So when I talk to any Indonesian politician or Southeast Asian politician, they will say, I ask them, what do you fear most in your campaign? The answer is usually like a campaign hitam, right? Like some kind of black campaign saying that I'm a communist or a womanizer or or not Islamic. You can imagine, Faldo, some of and you've probably faced some yourself, have you? Black campaigns?
Yeah, of course. Even for the young politician like me, yeah, they try to collect all of the sins that you have done previously before, and maybe some related with the politics, maybe not, but they try to push the the information to the platform like Twitter, probably Facebook, maybe in Indonesia WhatsApp is one of the tools, right? Because I'm joining in a lot of WhatsApp group, and every day I see the misinformation about my party. This party is related with communists. This party related with la la la.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And do you think that every politician needs to have buzzer, maybe only just to defend himself or herself, or it's just because of the hype? Maybe politician doesn't understand they need this or not. Uh, if you prepare one army to fight another army, so it means that you will fight, right? Not just to clarify everything. What do you think about that?
That's right. That's right. So often when a politician then goes and hires buzzers or some form of campaign team digitally, they often end up producing black campaign material against their opponent. Right? So, in the classic line that someone told me or a few people use in Indonesia, where, when Michelle Obama said, when you go low, we go high. But in Indonesia, when you go low, we go lower. And it's a sense of the campaign now that we have to fight fire with fire. And therefore, you cannot survive in this SOSMED environment unless you have, buzzers to counter your other buzzers. So what does that mean? It means for a more sort of a less transparent election, an election that is based more around like fighting or black campaigning. And that's ultimately not good for democracy. And I do think it does resonate, like PSI and this ridiculous assertion that it's linked to the Communist Party does get spread around. And, people in areas who've never heard of PSI might just think, oh, I saw it on WhatsApp. They must be the Communist Party links, and then dismiss it. And that's the end of it. And it's unfortunately effective.
Yeah, it's very effective. And so it's hard for me, especially I'm being the leader of PSI on West Sumatra. West Sumatra is one of most conservative area in Indonesia. But Dr. Rose, I think that can we try to transform the discussion of the buzzer, I mean, like, I think it's okay in democracy. We try to fight about the ideas. We see that
Sure.
when the election on America, very offensive word. But in previously in Indonesia, when I read the history about how Sukarno, Hatta try to debate each other, they use a very tight debate. Why in the buzzer fight or buzzer war, there's no a very strong point, or just because this is democracy, this platform just need more people. And I mean, like, we can say that I win the discussion on the Twitter because
Yeah.
there's a lot of retweet, there's a lot of likes and viral. What do
Yeah.
you think about that?
Look, it's an excellent question. I think scholars, including some at the ANU that I work with, are going back to the 1955 elections in Indonesia and trying to see actually how different is this debate. And you could argue that they're very, very similar. The idea of the role that Islam should play in the nation state was front and center in that elections in 1955. And so the central debate, and which is about the Jakarta Charter and the role, you know, Islam as the dominant religion or just one of many religions that people want to debate. As you said, Faldo, they were discussing this, Sukarno and Hatta and so on, were discussing this in the early periods and in 1955. The difference now, of course, is that there's the internet and there's social media, and it's the way in which these discussions are held. And the way in which, I guess, identity politics groups can be targeted. And we know that social media campaigners can target people on Facebook in certain locations, like strong Islamic locations, and campaign on an Islamic platform for them. And so the concern might be that we end up in our little bubbles of you know, identity politics. And we certainly saw that in Jakarta in 2017. Around the issue of Ahok and so on. But the central premise of what is Indonesia and what role should Islam play in Indonesian politics has been going on for quite some time. But I think the other point here to make is it's okay to negatively campaign, right? It's okay to say my opponent's policies are terrible. You know, he hasn't done or she hasn't done a good job as a president, you know, but it's at what point does it become like Trump, where it goes too far and you get insurrection and this kind of thing? It's a big challenge of our time.
Okay. And do you know, because the politician invest on the social media troops, and the political party itself hire social media teams, right? I mean, like, maybe they have the war room. Yeah.
What do you see in these war rooms when you when you go in? What kind of activities are people doing?
Okay. Maybe I can share some the activities. They try to scratch the issue. Which one is trending today? Okay, this is the trending. They try to address the sentiment, the positive and negatives, and there's some report as well. Somehow this is being a business as well in Indonesia. There's a lot of consultants I know. They try to make an analysis about that, and they try to make the agenda setting. Okay, we will give response for this. We will give response for that. Hopefully, it's viral. Yeah. We in PSE, yeah. I mean, like, we believe with the content actually. So we don't. I don't know if there's somebody is doing this about the social media troops, but our in my knowledge, there's no buzzer from PSE, but I don't know about the another party. So it's just a situation room that capture every single situation in Indonesia. That's
yeah. So we've seen the rise of the professionalization of this kind of campaigning. As you say, there's now a lot of players trying to make money out of political parties and interest groups. But probably the broader concern for me is what happens in non-election times. And what we've seen here is the state take over buzzing and buzzers and continue to pay buzzers because they've got the resources and the finances to do that. So in Philippines, for example, you know, we talk a lot about Duterte's trolls, but what we mean by that is state-sponsored as in taxpayer funded, government funded buzzers in the Philippines who just continue to push his agenda. And so Duterte's popularity is extraordinarily high. It's in the 90%, right? There's very little dissent that can occur in the Philippines. And again, in Malaysia, sort of government-sponsored cyber troopers have been a thing for quite some time. And more recently in Indonesia, this idea that the palace has, buzzers and even pays influencers, which means that there isn't a very good opposition in some of these countries. That's an interesting point. So it's one thing if everybody has equal access to money and the same resources and the same digital campaigners, and it's an even playing field. But when the government has more resources and can outnumber the online campaigning, then it's really an unfair playing field.
So the government will win the battle always, right? Based on your statement.
Yeah, and I think you could look at certain polling numbers. I mentioned Duterte. You could look at Muhyiddin or Jokowi, and you could say that why are they polling so highly during a time when COVID is, really bad in these countries? And partly, perhaps, it's because that online dissent is being able to be drowned out by buzzing. I think there's a lot of factors involved here. It's not just one thing, but I think it's an important thing to think about when we think about, can people criticize governments online? And a problem, globally, not just in Southeast Asia.
Okay, Dr. Ross, I'm just curious about the correlation about the issue that really high on the social media and on the offline. Is there some research related with the coefficient if it's crowded on the social media platform? How is it related with the offline situation? Is it situational, proportional, or
good question. I think I think it's very important not to talk about social media being like the only factor in what shapes people's opinions. And in Indonesia, television is still incredibly important. And there was a survey done, I think, reported by Tempo the other day, where it said that 77% of Indonesians get their news about COVID from television. And was about 38% WhatsApp, 26% Facebook, and around about the same for Instagram. So especially for older generation and rural people, don't underestimate the power of Metro TV and TV1 in particular, the 24-hour news stations, in forming people's opinions on what they should do during COVID. Social media still remains a very urban and Java in particular central discourse.
But somehow the discussion topics on the television is influenced by what happening in the social media. Maybe it's trending in Twitter. The TV try to like when I tweet war with Budiman Sujatmiko in Twitter, the Kompas TV invite us to you have to fight here. So maybe the social media, because they have the technology about trending, maybe they have better technology to analyze the issue that people want, right? Maybe it's different with television, has a very long strategy to address the issue. What do you think?
Yeah, excellent point. And that's why people use Twitter. It's not so much to reach, the entire Indonesian population. It's to try to set agendas, which then gets picked up by the rest of the mainstream media or even other social media. So a lot of these digital campaigners, they will tell me that they will try out a type of campaign on Twitter first. And if it goes well on Twitter, then they use Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp and TV or whatever. But if it doesn't go anywhere on Twitter, they'll think, well, we won't continue it on other platforms. So because journalists are on Twitter, politicians like yourself and academics like me are on Twitter, we're looking for agendas. So that can be the main platform that sets agendas. And Trump, of course, used this model expertly. He would tweet out things which would form the media discussions for the rest of the day.
Yeah, because yeah, Twitter is the starting point, I think.
Yeah.
It's a starting point, but
Also,
what
everybody loves a fight between politicians, Faldo. You know, people want to report a Twitter spat between
yeah,
you and whoever, and
yeah,
just, you know, easy. It's an easy story to report for journalists. They don't
yeah,
have to go to the field. You know, they can just say, this is what's happening on Twitter right now.
yeah, true. But now today, Dr. Ross, I try to do a more experiment on Instagram actually. Especially my Instagram, my followers in Instagram is much bigger on the Twitter. I have 170 in Twitter, and I have 270 in Instagram actually. And I tried
Yep.
to do some political discourse, especially on Instagram story. So I do small research. Actually, I did a lot of research previously to about the buzzer and influencer, because in the Instagram there's a lot of celebgram, right? People who sell product, yeah. And I try to say that what is the difference between buzzer and the celebgram? They sell the same products. I think the buzzer sells the idea, the celebgram sells the clothing, the glasses, and so on. And they try to convince us, right? And when I do some research through my followers on Instagram, there's 1,300 samples, and they said that uh, uh, buzzer is bad, 89%, and 11% said it's good. So the word buzzer is bad. But when I said that, what is the difference between buzzer and celebgram? I mean, like, there's no difference, right? They sell something. And I tried to ask them, 63% said that buzzer is same with celebgram, and
Mhm.
37% said no, it's different. The
Mhm.
different, the buzzer is bad, the celebgram is good.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I suppose the answer to in defense of those people would be with Celebgram, you often understand that they are selling something and they can often
yeah,
be quite clear about what they're selling. You know, it's
yeah,
very obvious sometimes.
mm,
Sometimes it's not, but sometimes it is. And with with buzzing, it's a much more sort of dark, shadowy game where,
yeah,
you know, fake accounts,
mm,
hidden accounts, anonymous
hidden
accounts.
anonymous account, true.
Yeah, so celebgrams, they can, you know, it's very clear that they're there to try and sell the product, and you know that that's part of it. But I do like your point about the growth of Instagram, and I'd be interested in whether you think it's a very political platform, because my first thought was, you know, people want to just look at nice photos
Mm,
and, you know, nice products, and politics. Instagram is very apolitical. But then you see people like AOC on Instagram, who's very good at relating to her audience and explaining like she's your friend, you know, just
mm,
going on and telling a story.
mm.
So I must follow you too, Faldo, and watch your
I will
techniques. But
follow you first.
what do you think? Oh, there's nothing to see in me on Instagram. No one wants to see an academic on Instagram. But Twitter, we can be useful.
Okay.
But yeah, what do you think? Do you think people are interested in politics on Instagram?
Because the platform gives the Instagram live, it's much I mean, like, more accessible than Twitter Live and Facebook Live. So because people wants to know the AOC photos,
Mm.
and when AOC said that they use the Instagram stories to share the announcement. Okay, everyone, I will live on my Instagram at 6 p.m. and people will watch. So it's very like, sir. The user interface and the access, it's maybe it's hard when you use Facebook Live or Zoom like this or YouTube Live, or it's you have to set a lot of
Mm.
things. But when you use Instagram, you just put your camera,
Mm.
ta-da, live. So it's
Mm.
very simple. I think that's the good point of the Instagram.
Well, the people in Indonesia who have shown how to do it is the preachers, right? The Islamic
Mm,
preachers who are
mm.
just
Yeah,
extraordinary in the reach that they can get on Instagram.
true,
Abdul Samad and these guys.
true.
You know, it's revolutionized preaching that all the old Mui guys are upset that everybody's following these Islamic preachers now, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course. And because the Instagram has they develop feature. I mean, like the Twitter, try to use Fleet because of the Instagram stories, yeah, the Facebook stories, the WhatsApp stories. So because they are same company, except Twitter. So I think every single application of social media will be the same on the future. Yeah, and about the Instagram, uh, do you think that I think because buzzer always play on the gray area, the unclear area, the anonymous area.
Mm.
That's why I want to say that the buzzer is same with the Telegram. So they try to show their identity, and we can fight on the real battlefield because it's hard for me to try to fight back for buzzer. I mean, like somebody anonymous, and I think when we try to when I try to say that buzzer is same with Telegram, so we try to put them on the same battlefield because now we have UITE, we have some regulation, but it's hard to find people like Abu Janda who declare as buzzer, gitu,
Right.
right?
Right.
So that's how we can put it in the same battlefield. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I worry about the use of Undang-Undang ITE. I think that it's being used problematically in Indonesia. I think, it's been unfairly used. People are being arrested when they don't need to be arrested.
Yeah, of
It's
course.
used as this stick approach to try and show to the rest of society, if we get these like 50 people, everybody else will fall into line. So there's a danger of using a harsh law to try to restrict. And Singapore is a good example of this. They introduced the POFMA law, which people can Google, and it's not working because, of course, the government wants to crack down on opposition figures who criticize it.
Yeah.
And that's the danger with a law like an anti-fake news law or Undang-Undang ITE. It gets abused by the powerful to cut down people who are less powerful. But in terms of this idea of transparency, I think it's very important, and we need to try to make the online space, and including who declares whether they're paid to promote something, a more transparent place. And that happens in TV. If you buy an ad, it's very clear that the advertisement is, and political parties have to declare how much they pay on TV advertising, and certain television stations have rules about how much they can show of TV advertising. It's not perfect, but it's some attempt at transparency. On the online system, there's no rules around this, right? It's just like, do whatever you want, give as much money to Facebook as you want. Facebook doesn't have to declare where the money comes from. They just take up the money, get $1 billion company. And of course, this is a huge problem, the lack of transparency in social media campaigning.
I mean, like, is it possible for a country to try to, try to control the social media platform? Say that, hey, please tell us this content is paid by Partai Golkar. This content is paid by Partai Nasdem. Is it possible? I don't think so, right?
Well, you'd need Facebook to be more transparent for a start. So this needs to happen at the Mark Zuckerberg level, where they declare how much money was spent on Facebook in an election campaign, including Pilkada, not just national election.
Okay.
So that's one way. Another way, it's more difficult, but it's to have the KPU to have some kind of rules, or Bawaslu to have rules around, what can be advertised on SOSMED and what can't. And then when you see a black campaign or something, you can report that to Bawaslu. They can investigate. It's very difficult, but these are the conversations Bawaslu and KPU and so on are having at the moment. But the trouble, I think, in Indonesia is that it's become more towards the realm of the police through the cyber unit. Okay. And in fact, some of these decisions need to be made more in a non-security apparatus. I can understand you need the police in some aspects, but not every aspect needs to be reported through the cyber police crime unit and the Menkominfo. You know, the more that the government is involved, the more they're likely to attack or to use it for their own interests. Any government, not just the Jokowi government, any government in power, the ministry will want to use it for their own purposes. And so the trouble is Menkominfo and the police are connected to try to regulate or control the digital sphere. And really it should be an independent organization.
I think on Bawaslu and KPU they try to, I mean, like make some regulation about the campaign especially, but yeah, if I'm not mistaken, you also said on your report that it's hard to make some evidence for the buzzer that they are related with the candidates or the political party, right? Because they work on the gray area. So is it like a dark business or high trading, something like that, do you think?
Yes, absolutely. That's the problem, is that it's very shadowy. And this is, you know, not just Indonesia, but, you know, we talked about Instagram before. And a lot of people probably don't know that Indonesia has click farmers on Instagram. So, you know, there's this sort of underground labor campaign, and you can totally understand why people would sign up to make money out of this industry. It makes sense, particularly for university students, you know, younger people who just want a part-time job. You can understand why, I just go on you do these things on my phone. The problem is, how do you expose this? And really, it's up to the platforms in some ways. Facebook and Twitter, occasionally they do takedowns. And we've seen this in some cases in the Philippines, where they say we're taking down all these what they call inauthentic behavior. And they need to do more of that, because when they do that, it discourages people to create inauthentic behavior, essentially. So then they need to be transparent about why they took down them. So there was one recently in the Philippines where they took down Facebook pages linked to the Indonesian police. To the Philippines police.
Philippine police.
Which is, you know, quite good that Facebook says, we've caught you doing this stuff and we've blocked all these accounts now. And that's what needs to happen in Indonesia as well, you know, and occasionally that's happened, but it's not happening enough.
Yeah, because the social media platform try to accept if there's a lot of people report one content, right, sir?
Well, frankly, I don't think they take Southeast Asia seriously enough. I think they've been very focused on the US and Trump in the past 4 years. Every day they would go in thinking, how do we handle Trump? Now you've got Joe Biden, who's not going to have the same craziness that Trump has. And they need to think more about the role that social media can play and focus more energies on particular Southeast Asia. You know, Myanmar has been a huge problem for Facebook for a number of years. But Indonesia, Philippines, of course, big countries with highly capable people using these kind of campaigns. And Facebook needs to take Southeast Asia more seriously, and Twitter and you know, some of the big companies, but particularly Facebook.
Have you got some statement about this from the Facebook and Southeast Asia, Dr. Ross? I mean, like the people who work on the...
Well, I mean, a lot of the people working for Facebook in Indonesia or Southeast Asia, they're sort of policy people. Their job is to go to a minister or a politician like yourself, hear them out, and then report back to, you know, Menlo Park in California or Washington. Yeah. So there's this chain of command, and for it, you know, for things to get up to that chain of command, it's very difficult. So there's people around and they're expanding, and that's good, but they need to do more in that. They're trying to do more election integrity work. But the 2019 election showed that despite having, you know, people in these spaces, it was still very possible for a lot of disinformation to get put out that the election was rigged, and you had riots on the streets of Jakarta and so on.
Actually, if I have time, I will try to address the people who work on the social media about your concern, and I will come to you later, or if you have time, I will try to invite you again, because we try to make the panel, because I have some concern about this issue, because this issue has arisen on the new media development, and the newest election that I was joined on the election. So I think in the future, due to the pandemic situation, due to the rise of the social media, the rise of economy, the rise of politics, uh, I don't want to see the polarization in 2024 election in Indonesia. Honestly, it's very hard and difficult to rebuild again. I think, Dr. Rose.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because you do want an opposition. You do want two distinct groups that campaign on different policy platforms so voters can choose what they prefer. So in some ways, I'm worried that you're going to get two candidate groups who are very similar.
Yeah.
You know, let's say, I don't know, Prabowo, Puan, Bakri Surya Paloh or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you get the idea, you know, people who don't seem particularly different. And so, yeah, on the one hand, it's good to have policy differences. But on the other hand, you don't want it to get to the stage where, you know, you've got this real aggression and potentially violence. So, yeah, that's the challenge of democracy. That's what we all, that's why they say, you know, the challenge of democracy is the first 1,000 years. It's a constant work in progress. And, you know, we've got problems here in Australia too around that. People can say, oh, there's not much polarization here. That's great. But then who are we electing? Like one sort of boring white guy versus another boring white guy who essentially has the same platform of sort of lower taxes, and you know there's not much difference. So yeah, some polarization is good, but it's to what extent?
Yeah, maybe it can be interesting for some reason, but it will be bad for another reason. Okay, Dr. Rose, maybe this is my last question because it's already 45 minutes. I don't know.
Yep.
Go on. Do you have any message for the politician or people who are interested in politics? Because a lot of my subscriber, my followers, they are interested in politics, especially the young politician. I mean, like, how can they survive? This is one of the questions from the netizen. He asked to me through the commentary on my Instagram. How can I survive to face the buzzer storm, brother, as the people who interested on political issue?
Well, I guess the answer in the Pilkada has been interesting in 2020, because I thought, and many people thought, that social media would play a really important role in that because of COVID and people are at home. But in fact, the evidence so far seems to suggest that some of the old forms of campaigning, like grassroots campaigning, door knocking, you know, going and being mobilized on the ground in the field, and of course, you know, money politics is a factor in that. But that is actually still absolutely crucial to an election in Indonesia. So while buzzers make a lot of noise, they may not determine votes. And what determines votes is grassroots campaigning, grassroots activism, mobilizing groups together. So people out there, they shouldn't be disillusioned with politics because of buzzing. They should say, okay, we're going to ignore that noise and we're going to actually try to meet people face to face and help them in their lives. And, you know, that is the key difference between winning a campaign and losing a campaign, having a lot of people involved in your campaign, not just buying buzzers. And that will ultimately win an election. And Pilkada showed that in a lot of ways where, you know, people did use forms of social media campaigning, but in most cases it was the grassroots connection that was more important.
So can we say that a lot of politicians trapped on algorithm or trapped on social media platform, people who has concern of political issue trapped on the noise only, right? But the situation on the society may be different, totally different. Maybe if you want to go away from the buzzer, just turn off your phone, bye, and face the reality. Maybe that's the answer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're all using our phones more and more, including on probably listening to this conversation. So yeah, we can't say like turn off your phones, but it's not don't become disillusioned with politics because of buzzers, and
Okay.
be involved in other ways. I
Mm.
think in grassroots campaigning still makes a big difference.
Okay. Okay. Okay, Dr. Rose, thanks for your time. I'm very happy to
Thanks,
have
Valdo. Great
you.
to catch up.
I'll try to put your Twitter account on my content. Hopefully, a lot of people in Indonesia, my followers, try to learn a lot from you. Thanks again,
Thanks.
Dr.
Lovely to
Rose.
talk.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
Bye
Can
bye.
hope to see you again. Bye bye. Thank you.